Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Tinted Glasses, the number one Leicester City Football Club fan channel on the internet. Internet's home for the match previews, Aston Villa versus Leicester City, the second time we're going to be playing the Villains this season. But special treat for you today, doing the match preview entirely today, it's Luke from LCFC Down Under. So firstly, Happy New Year to you, Luke. How are you doing down in Oz?
I'm good, thank you. It's not too hot. It's all right. I'm looking forward to doing this preview. A lot to be optimistic about. And yeah, let's roll on for this January transfer window in Aston Villa. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Feeling nervous. Only 19 games to go now. It's not looking too great. We have got out of it before. I think this is going to be the battle of a lifetime. But the battle starts on Saturday, doesn't it? So take it away, Luke. Why don't you tell us about Aston Villa versus Leicester City, round 2?
So let's get into it. So just to begin with, let's quickly go for some recent form here. Aston Villa sitting ninth on the table. One can make the argument that similar to Newcastle the season before, they potentially don't have the depth to contend with Champions League football and the Premier League. Hence why a lot of the fans reckon they need to really bolster the transfer window in January, get some players in to replace injuries, etc. Particularly the defense. Sounds a lot like us. But look, bit of a patchy form, mate. They're no mugs by no means. Aston Villa, 2. And Brighton, they drew. We'll talk about that game in a minute, but lots to get into of that game. They probably feel a bit robbed in that game, and I can understand why. But look, moving on, I've just seen that the slide's gone on. New Duran and O Rodgers. Now, this is crucial, not having any Duran or Rodgers. Mate, between them, they have 13 goals and assists and score involvements. So not having either of them is absolutely huge, and I will touch on that why later. But look, not having these two if there's any time for them to be taken, this is it. No Duran, no Rodgers, and no Torres either is a huge, crucial 3 outs for Aston Villa. So they're going to be sweating a little bit on that, I would imagine. So it'll be interesting to see, Anil, who steps up as that attacking second, up front, and we'll touch on that soon. Moving on. Now, this is one player that's now been integrated back into the side of out Duran in, and he's been under the microscope and he's been out for 5 games. But although I think he had a much better game against Brighton. So last season, he had 19 score involvements last season, which was huge. This season, 0 goals and 2 assists in 16 games, which is pretty significant. So he's dropped off in terms of form, but hopefully for Aston Villa fans, he can start to reach those heights he did last season. Now, in my opinion, the attacking outlet needed after selling Moussa Diaby, which had 14 score involvements last season, needs to be replaced. And you have seen that with Rodgers, but it's still something to mention. Moving on, Unai Emery. Now, how does Unai Emery play? A very, very high line. He likes to have that second striker attacking midfielder moving up into that attacking 2 position. Short passes in build-up and high press. Now, I'm really going to break this down later in the preview because I think that it's something to be exploited, particularly with the injuries and outs that they have. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, Anil, before I move on?
No, let's keep going.
Okay. Now, Exhibit A. Now, this is right before the first goal against Brighton. Now, you can see Dunk, the skipper from Brighton, plays a beautiful long ball over the top, textbook counter-attack. And I want to point out something that I will touch on later, that both goals in this Brighton game all came from playing it out the back and drawing them out of position with the high line, which is something that we're going to talk about later because I think it's something that can be exploited of how we've been shaping up lately. So moving forward again, now here you can see Konsa, who is meant to be a centre-back, who's been utilised as a right-back, right on the halfway line. Now, this is where I think that we can do some damage in the game, and I'll explain why at the end of the video. But another exhibit of why a very high line can be costly, but look, that's right up there. Now, again, I want to touch on this later as well, but attacking is 2 up front on the break. Now, this is where I will explain that I think that we can exploit them because you can see here that there's acres of space. Granted, it is on the break, and you do see Tielemans sit behind the front 3, but it's something that I think to mention that how much space they leave here, if we're going to hit them on transition, this is where we can do some damage because they have a very unsettled defense. Torres is injured, and I really struggle to see, how Ming is going to be settled into the team. A lot of Aston Villa fans don't rate him. Some do. Mixed opinions. Now, improve it playing out the back. Is Leicester City turning a corner? Against Manchester City, I think that it was quite interesting to see how much of the ball that we had and how well we did playing it at the back. The patterns of passing have vastly improved. Triangle passing, playing out the back with confidence. I think that's going to be absolutely crucial with how Aston Villa do like to really high press up the pitch, and they really like to, force those overloads and those short passes that they play. I think that Bilal is now definitely established as the playmaker. He can play up further at the pitch. He can drop deep. He can link the play. He was absolutely everywhere. There's a lot to be excited with Bilal, so it's absolutely nailed on that he's going to be our 10 now, as well as Samari now down now as a double pivot. Now, I never would have thought that I would say that 3 years ago, but definitely now I'm very excited. And those two can both interchange with one another. If, Bilal does take one of those, Samari takes one of those balls further up the pitch and he goes on a run and carries the ball, Bilal can drop deep to, take his position. And we've seen that as well once Winks got substituted off for Daka in the last game. So it's noteworthy to know that they can interchange with one another. Samari, really, really optimistic about him and Neil. I'm hoping that he keeps hitting the ground running. And the identity is now forming slowly under Ruud van Nistelrooy now. That compact 4-4-2 out of possession, that mid-block, I think is something that's going to be crucial to us beating Aston Villa if we're going to get a result. This is the 11 that I expect to see. Vardy up top. Now, I'll be interested to see if they play Vardy or if they play Daka, because if Aston Villa, right, where I think that they attack up in twos and we're going to hit them on the break and we're going to hit them on the counter. Now, do you go with Vardy, who's got the intelligence, and even though he was caught offside twice in the last game, do you go with Jamie Vardy, making that intelligent run off the shoulder? Or, in my opinion, I'll be interested to see if Ruud van Nistelrooy starts Daka, because if you can make an argument for a game to start Pats and Daka, this is it. If we're going to hit them on the break and bull over the top, similar to that Exhibit A in that first goal against Brighton, he's your man for it. Unfortunately, he's known to have a poor first touch, but if there's any game for him to hit the ground running, this is it. But I do still expect Jamie Vardy to start up top. Bilal Kounouz is, nailed down that position now, in my opinion. And this is where it's going to get conflicted and a lot of mixed opinions on Leicester City fans right now. Steffi Mavididi. I think that this is crucial, this game, and I'll explain why in a second. But him versus Konsa now is really our only out-and-out winger, and I think it's a right shame that we're not going to have Fatau in the lineup for a long time, particularly this game, because both fullbacks from Aston Villa do push further up the pitch, and they do almost invert and compact in that midfield. So I do think that Mavididi can exploit that, particularly if we're going to hit them on the break. Both him and Vardy, I think, are the most important people in this game. On the right side, Buonanotte, they play through the middle. That's why I think it's a shame we don't have Fatawi. They really compact in the middle. And I think Fatawi hugging that touch on the right-hand side would have done some serious damage. But Buonanotte, I expect to start again. I don't think it's going to be Ayew. And I think that there is a time and place for Ayew to start and to play, holding up the ball and giving it off. But I think that we have been known under Ruud van Nistelrooy to play back to front very fast. And I think this is the game to do it, particularly with how compact and how much they play a high line and compress that centre under Aston Villa. Harry Winks, going to be super important if we're going to be confident on the ball and playing it out the back. I think that distributing the ball from Vestergaard to him and then to either Kounouz, etc., I think he's going to be the most important, as you like to call, heartbeat and link between defence and attack. So I think Winks is up for a big game. Samari, really, really hope he continues with his form. He's going to be massive for that physical presence in the midfield. He just looks massive when he takes the ball and drives forward. So I think that he's going to be crucial. Now, this is where I'm a bit conflicted. Now, some people may shout for Okoli over Cody. I know Manny shouts for it, and I can see reason why. But I think we're going to need an organised back four, because I don't think, Anil, that we're going to have as much possession as we did against Manchester City. I believe we're going to allow Aston Villa to have more possession, let them get more confident on the ball. And I believe that if we can be confident playing it at the back and draw them out of position, we can hit them. I'll explain why later. JJ and Christensen, fullbacks. There's no one really else, unfortunately. I can't see. Maybe you could make a shout for Hamza, but I just don't see this as a right game for Hamza. Although, do you disagree?
No, not necessarily. I got some questions for you. Do you have anything on what we think the Villa lineup will be, given that Morgan Rogers won't play? Who will they play in instead of him? I'm interested. Or do you not know? If you don't know, it's fine.
I'm interested as well, because I think that they're going to probably push McGinn further up the pitch, but I'm not entirely sure. No, to be honest with you, I'm very curious to see what they do, and if they even do attack of a two up front in possession. I don't think they actually might. I think they might tweak it a little bit. But what are your thoughts on what they think will do?
Well, I was going to give you some interesting stats, right? So believe it or not, when they beat us at home, we actually had 57% possession, which sounds crazy given that Steve Cooper was in charge, but is true. And it was a bit unfortunate that we only really started playing after we went 2-0 down, that we did get one goal back. And the feeling was if we'd have taken the game to them earlier, we might have done more damage. That said, Ollie Watkins had a bit of an off day on that game. So I'm curious as to what his recent form is. So that's something to think about. In terms of what we do on the right-hand side, so the thing is the way that they play is that they have basically the same system that Cooper was trying to do and what Rude is, where they have one of their fullbacks that pushes up to become a wide player, right? And it's Luca Digne. And so he's basically playing as a left winger in attack. And so they compact it down one side and they try to overload it with him. So I think that worries me a little bit, I suppose, with Buonanotte and Justin. Is that just not going to be the same problem that we see all season long, where Buonanotte does play well, but what happened with the first goal, although it's a bit unfortunate because it was a Stolarczyk mistake, that, you know, Savinho was totally free because no one was picking him up. So that I still worry about. But I obviously don't know. But I mean, I think we could have got something in that first game, but maybe, you know, Villa hadn't quite warmed up. So it's difficult to see what will happen. But I don't know, I think Hamza, I don't know if you saw, we did the match analysis and we were showing how Rude is doing these rotations now where sometimes the fullback actually goes into the number 8 position and then the number 8 actually moves out wide. And, you know, maybe Hamza could be something good for that. I do think that JJ's in need of a rest, but I suspect he will be used for this match in the first team, not Hamza.
I agree, mate. And it's a shame that we haven't got more depth there. I think that a lot of people thought that Hamza did well when he came on, myself included. I'm always been pretty harsh on him. I just think that whenever he has a decent spell like that, particularly if it's off the bench and then he gets started again, he reminds us all of why he's a squad option in terms of depth. But look, I could be wrong, mate. JJ's confidence is at the floor, but I really hope that, you know, with his pace, I think he can do some damage in this game. Right, this is a key battle for me. There's a lot of Villa fans that are unhappy with Konsa at the moment and how hype the pitch is getting. Now, Konsa, in my opinion, I just finished watching the game, is very, very similar in terms of mistakes at JJ, where he's pushed well up the pitch. He's been involved in a lot of the attack. He will push up the pitch, similar to how JJ was instructed to with Cooper and still is kind of now. And I think that can be exploited. If Mavrididi's on one and he can win this and hug that touchline and really press him and stretch him up the pitch, I think he can absolutely do one, particularly with a ball over the top. He's got the pace to do it. He's got the step overs. I think that this is a battle that I really would like to see, and I think that he's definitely going to be starting for that reason. I think Konsa's not low of confidence, and I think Steffi's got a point to prove to keep his position. So talk to me if you think that that's an interesting matchup to you, Anil.
It's definitely something that we can exploit. Depends what Mavrididi turns up. It depends if we're going to be utilising Christensen better, in my opinion. I think that's the one blot on Rude's copybook that he could improve. I think it's really good that you said earlier that the identity is starting to form. I feel that identity was very clear actually against Man City, and it was quite impressive other than the result. But the one thing that maybe did strike you as room for improvement, well, one was putting the ball in the back of the net, but I actually think we made plenty of good enough chances on that. It wasn't like we weren't creating chances, we just didn't do it. But the thing that did stand out is that on the left-hand side, on occasion, it felt like there was the opportunity to do more and we didn't take it. And it was because of either the lack of trust or a lack of communication between Christensen and Mavrididi. So maybe that's something that could be exploited. But I do still think that Mavrididi should have got another assist if Vardy would have headed in against Man City. So I think he is creating a threat there. So it's something that we can look at for sure. And as you say, though, I think the bigger thing, which I guess you're hinting at, is more the high line, because, you know, we did it quite a few times that last season, the teams that did try and play a high line, if anything, it was Mavrididi who was the threat. I remember that great chipped goal that he scored against Birmingham when he was like, actually, it's funny, you've got his Player of the Month award there. That was the month that he got it from. So that's what we could definitely look to exploit. I do remember again in the first game against Villa, though, we did try and like kick it along quite a few times. But the problem is that we didn't do it particularly well. And what ended up happening is that just, you know, their keeper came out and, you know, gobbled it up. So we've got to do that, I think, in a much better thing. But what I will say is that weirdly, when we played Villa last time, Vestergaard wasn't playing. It was Okoli and Wout Faes as the back two. So, you know, Vestergaard with his distribution, maybe there's something that we could look to exploit there.
Perfect. That leads me on to my next point. Keys to victory. Now, in my opinion, we need to maintain and compact mid-block 4-4-2 out of possession, which we're seeing with Man City. And the reason why I think for that is how much they overload the middle. They really compact themselves in the middle. They attack in high numbers. They all move together as a unit, Aston Villa, and they play short passes to one another, okay? And they all commit. They've got an insanely high press, particularly with their high line. So I think that is going to be needed when we're going to have lesser possession. But then again, we have to be set up and ready so that when we do hit them on transition, I think that's where they look vulnerable. We can do some damage. Exploit the high line. Like I mentioned to you already, if you go back and you watch both goals against Brighton, they come from them playing it back, drawing the players out of position. The high line gets even further committed forward and a ball over the top, and you start to, or they build it up and you hit them with a goal. That's what happens. Go back and watch that game. I really recommend you watch both goals because you'll see that they both come from playing it out the back to the keeper and then drawing them out of position. Be clinical on transition. This is the game, in my opinion, to play it back fast. We've been critical of Ruud van Nistelrooy. We're trying to play it too fast. I think this is the game to do it. And I think this is where your likes of Boyanotze and your likes of Mavididi are going to be absolutely huge to be able to take on their man and win and get the ball forward. And hopefully Vardy can be in space and Vardy can be ready to receive the ball. Or Daka, should he start with his pace. Be direct on the counter and fast. Just mention that. This is the most important one for me, mate. Be brave playing it out the back for the reasons I just alluded to of Brighton and what we all just saw in the Man City game. There was plenty of times where we saw us playing at the back, nice patterns of play. We looked confident and we looked a lot more composed than we've seen, in my opinion, in any other game this season. So I think this is the game to do it. And I think this is where we can be exploiting Aston Villa. I am just going to point it out, though, that I've probably sounded like, where I'm on my high horse a little bit of Leicester City. We are in the relegation zone for a reason, and Aston Villa are a really good side. I'm talking with a little bit more optimistic and confidence just because of the form against Man City and the amount of injuries and suspensions that they have. So Aston Villa is a really good side, mate, and I really enjoy watching them. I just think that if there was any time to be confident of getting a result, now would be it. Now, just moving on, I just want to bring up an Aston Villa fan. Luke, I'm sure you've got the video there to play, Neil. Why don't you play that?
Yep, sure. So let's see what the Villa fans think the result's going to be on Saturday.
Villa v Leicester, here are my predictions. So I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Villa at home, we're pretty good. We had a disappointing draw against Brighton from playing pretty well. So we are pretty strong at Villa Park. So I expect it to probably be a tight game. Leicester have got players that can hurt Villa. You've got, tricky players. You've got Mavididi, who I think's really dynamic. Buonanotte, who I've been really impressed with this season. So those are two players that I think have really impressed me. I think Rudy sort of had that little bit of a lift in there. He sort of had the win against West Ham, the draw against Brighton, and then you've had 4 defeats where you've conceded a lot of goals. So I think you need to sort of shore up the defence. But I think it is going to be tough for Leicester to stay up. I think you look at the 3 teams that are currently in the relegation zone. Those are the 3 teams that came up, and I think that shows the gap between the Championship and the Premier League currently of the teams that do get promoted. So my score prediction, I'll go with a 2-1 Villa win.
2-1, says Luke from Villa. What does Luke from Blue Tinted Glasses think? What do you think the score is going to be?
I'm going to go Desmond. I'm going to go 2-2. I'm feeling I'll be happy to take a point, although I think we need all 3, but I'm going to go at Desmond, mate. What about yourself?
I would sadly probably agree with Luke from up the Villa, 2-1 to them. No, not because I don't think we can't get anything. I could even see us winning the game, to be honest. But they are a good team. They are playing at home. They are in quite good form. They got some injuries, but I'm not sure they're the real key players. I think Morgan Rogers is a very good player. He actually did cause us a lot of problems in that first game. But, Ollie Watkins is still a great striker. McGinn, Tillemans, the sort of heartbeat of the team. We didn't talk about Amadou Onana, who was, I think, man of the match in that game against Leicester the first time round. So I still feel like they've got their core there. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think, where they are in the table, you'd probably give them home advantage. I'd probably give them the narrow victory, 2-1.
Do you think Onana starts, though? He didn't start last game. A lot of fans were disappointed that he didn't start.
Well, let's see. But I'm guessing Emery saw how good he was against us the first time round, that he'll probably look to replicate him. But I would expect him to. But as I say, we don't know too much about the Villa lineup. So
Okay, mate. No worries. Well, look, thank you for having us on today for this preview, mate. Subscribe to Blue Tinted Glasses, the best Leicester City fan channel on the internet. I'm happy to just be a part of it and just help out. And Neil, give us a shout out to what we got coming up on the channel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Luke, firstly, for doing a match preview. Great stuff. Hopefully it's the first of many. Yeah, stay tuned to the channel. Tomorrow we've got Team Builder with Locks. That's going to be a Friday at 7 o'clock. We're going to have Match Day Live and the Instant Match Reaction, which of course will feature Luke. And if you're lucky, he may or may not be wearing his infamous vest, depending on how results go. I think that's one of the most entertaining shows of the week. But also keep tuned to the channel every day. Now that the transfer window's open, you know that the news is coming in thick and fast, and we will be updating you with all the latest developments as they happen. Until then, thank you so much. Thank you, Luke, and see you next time on Blue Tinted Glasses.